Hey there, welcome to the garden. It is another beautiful evening out here. I just checking on all the plants, and I wanted to sit down and chat about three absolutely gorgeous perennials that I just picked up that I'm going to be adding to my container garden. I think when we think of long-lasting color and pollinators and big bloom impact in the garden, we often think about going toward those typical annual flowers, but there's a few perennials that can actually also give you that same impact, and you could have them for multiple years in your container garden. They also grow really well in containers. You know me, I'm not going to mess around with a plant that's not going to be a high performing, beautiful bloomer all season long. It's just in my small little container gardens that I have. I want that big impact all season long. But these three plants are just going to be gorgeous. They actually all happen to be blue. So if you're looking for a blue color in your garden, you might want to check these out too. Sometimes blue can be a little hard to find, but these are really pretty, like true blue flowers, and they're going to bloom all season, and they're going to come back next year, and they're going to really bring the pollinators into your garden. So I am gardening here for the first time, and I have found that the first season that you grow in a garden, typically you don't have quite as many pollinators. So I'm trying to add a lot of pollinator plants into this garden so that I can get the pollinators quickly adjusted to coming to my garden and find it, and that'll just help overall with all the production of my vegetable plants. They obviously need that pollination, some of them do, to produce fruit, so I want to bring the pollinators in, plus I just want to help my local pollinator population and all of that, and that's where I found these three plants. So let me go run and grab them. I have a whole stack of plants right here that are all my new finds from the garden center. So many good things, but let's go get these perennials real quick. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I got all of these in 4-inch pots, so they're not totally doing their big flowering thing yet, but they will be soon, and no need to worry on that. I'm going to start with the plant that is blooming. So this is an absolutely gorgeous pincushion flower. Scabiosa is the other name for a pincushion flower. It is so beautiful, as you can see. These are really great pollinator attractors. You've probably seen them before. It's one of the things that I noticed about them last season. I saw a bunch of people that had pincushion flowers in their gardens. I just thought they were so pretty and kind of romantic and sort of like classical cottagey garden meadow style garden plants. Just really beautiful and sweet, and add a little bit of, I don't know, texture to the garden. The bloom is a little bit different than, say, like those big bold petunias, and you know, even the calibrachoas, some of those big bold petal, the zinnias even. These are kind of like lighter and more delicate, really pretty, but the pollinators are gonna love it. This is a beautiful blue. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus on it. I might have to pull it down. This really beautiful blue. It's a pretty true blue. Some blues tend to be a little bit purple, but I think this, oh look, see, there's already a little bug floating around it. Tend to be like a little bit on the purple side, but I think this is a pretty good blue, pretty true blue, and the variety is called Flutter Deep Blue Pincushion Flower, Scabiosa. It is a perennial, so this is a perennial in zone 5 through 9. So actually not, I think we're zone 10 in my current area, so maybe not a perennial where I am, but for a lot of you, and 5 through 9 is a pretty good zone. For a lot of you, this will be a good flower, and it's full sun, grows about 12 to 14 inches tall, prefers well-drained soil, and it's going to bloom all the way through the summer, mid-spring, all the way through the summer, which is perfect. About all of these perennials that I'm talking about today is that they all like well-draining soil and are sort of pretty drought tolerant, they say, once the plants get established. Obviously you need to water them in once you get them into their new home, but being drought tolerant, being heat tolerant, and liking well-draining soil are all qualities that are going to be good for a container. So if you are looking at a perennial and you see those qualities, that might be something to note, that it's going to be good for container. I have a very hot pavement patio garden here, so a good heat tolerant plant is a must for me. That's going to be really great. And different varieties are more bred, conditioned to growing in containers. And so all three that I'm going to talk about today also are specifically labeled as being good for containers. They have been proven to do well in containers, which is something that's helpful to look at. You don't just have to do annuals in the garden. You can grow perennial in your container garden, I should say. You can grow perennials in container gardening, and there just are some that are better suited to it, and actually they'll typically be labeled. One of the things that's nice about this for a container garden is that it's got a compact sort of squatty habit. You can already see it in even this small plant. It's kind of stout, it's got real pretty foliage, so it's already decorative, and it's just gonna fit beautifully in a container. It's gonna be a nice shape. I could do this in a container all by itself, or I could pair it with some other annuals or other perennials. I'm not entirely sure where this one is going to go, but it's just a beautiful sort of short plant to be at the front of maybe a really big container, or the centerpiece of a smaller container, I think would be good for this. And as you can also see, it's covered in bloom. So as I said, this is like one of the biggest things for me. If I'm gonna put a perennial into my container garden, I want it to bloom like an annual. I do not want to sacrifice bloom. A big one that it's gonna be blooming like this, like crazy, and hopefully it should continue like this all through the summer, so it can bloom beautifully next to all of my annuals and just look great. And I'm so happy to have one. I actually have a few more pincushion flowers that I started from seed growing in this trough planter. So that is another option. You can always start them from seed, but if you didn't get a chance to do that, think about one of these for maybe in your container garden. So then one of the most tried and true types, just in general types of flowers that do really well in container gardens are, and especially, well, both in containers and for pollinators, I should say, are Salvia. I mean, like, if you just want a hardy plant that's gonna handle kind of terrible conditions, grab, sorry, the wind's blowing the door here. Grab a Salvia. I have put more Salvia in containers and been happier with them, just all different varieties, black and blue, blue sage hues. Oh my gosh, they just, even if you like forget a watering, not that you should, please stay on top of the water in your container garden, but they're more forgiving than a lot of plants. They'll give you a lot of grace. They will handle those dry conditions if it happens in your container, and they will bloom like crazy. They will just bloom and bloom and bloom and bloom without a break. A lot of them you don't even have to deadhead, although this one, I probably will deadhead. This is a Mystic Spires. I picked this because it's specifically the salvia, of all the salvias, that is been recommended for containers. Likes full sun, it likes well draining soil. It's gonna get to be about 18 to 24 inches tall, so it is a nice size for containers. Although maybe, you know, if you have a huge container, then obviously you can pick one of the bigger varieties of salvia. But my container garden this year, other than of course the raised beds, I don't have any really like massive containers, so I don't need a salvia that turns into a tree. Last year I had the black and blue salvia that did beautifully, actually in kind of a part shade setting. Did incredible, brought in so many hummingbirds and bees, but it got really, 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 really big. So I don't want it to just like totally take over the container. And about 12 to 18 feet wide, inches wide, 12 to 24 inches tall. It's gonna be really, really beautiful. Zone 7 to 10, it is hardy, so you can have it year after year after year if you're in any of those zones. And another thing that's fun about salvias is that I have found that they bloom like all the way up until frost. In my past few gardens, they have been some of the flowers that stayed in the garden like blooming until the frost took them out, just all the way up until like Christmas back in Virginia. So they're really fun because they're just sturdy plants. And this is, as I said, the Mystic Spire. So it's a slightly smaller version or variety, I guess, hybrid of Indigo Spires, which is a little bit bigger salvia. As I said, there's lots of different varieties of salvia, but this one is going to be pretty, and it's just a nice size for a container, and it has all those great qualities that's going to make it really awesome. And the bees just love it. Like especially a lot of those, you know, like the little native bees that are just teeny tiny. I find that I often see them on these blooms. They have those real small, pretty little like blue blooms. These really beautiful little small blooms, so stunning, and they look kind of, you know, cottagey, whimsical, sort of in that like wildflowery look. Beautiful, beautiful. A similar type of plant in the sense of the blooms in these kind of spire formation, but also another good one for containers that you may not necessarily think of immediately for containers are Agastache. I think that's how you say it, Agastache. So this is a blue fortune Agastache. It's not quite blooming yet. The other two, as you can see, the Salvia hasn't started to bloom, although we've got a bud right there. This one isn't quite yet. I think it might start blooming slightly later in the season, but once it gets blooming, it is going to keep going and going and blooming all season long. It's going to be about 36 inches tall, so a little bit taller, a little bit bigger, but it does great in containers, wants full sun, well-drained soil, and once it's established also, it's going to be able to handle slightly less, you know, water. And it's a zone 5 through 9 that it's hardy, so a pretty good zone range too. Are just always they're so gorgeous. They just, again, have that kind of, that same beautiful whimsical look, the beautiful spires. They're going to bring in all those little pollinators, and these I find that the butterflies really, really like these. So now it's a little bit taller, being more on the, what they say, 36-inch range. I think this one may end up going in my 2-foot circular raised bed that's also basically a container because it's on the concrete. So I'm going to give it like a good healthy space just so that I can put other plants around it to help support it, being that it's going to get so tall. It is good to have some taller plants as long as you have a big enough container, enough space. You know, sometimes the squattier, smaller plants are easier for containers. They work nicely. If you have that big container, having some of the taller things can bring in new pollinators. I love to plant like sunflowers and things in for that as well, but I think this is going to be 36 inches. It's going to be a nice like centerpiece to my big container, and I know the butterflies are going to come to it. So we've had a few bees and a few butterflies that I've seen in the garden space. There's a hummingbird that's been visiting my neighbor's gardens. I'm hoping maybe that will come to the garden too. Definitely the salvia will bring in hummingbirds. My past garden salvia has been a big one for the hummingbirds, but you know, the Agastache might too, but definitely this is going to be one that we're going to see butterflies on, lots and lots of bees, and they're just going to be really happy. So I just wanted to share these 3 today because I think sometimes we don't always think about perennials for container gardening, and there really are some really good options, and they can sometimes meet some of your container gardening goals, and can be really helpful in creating a beautiful full looking container garden, and also cut down on the cost so that you're not having to buy new plants for every single container every year, especially if you're doing solely container gardening. It can get kind of crazy to be always getting all annuals from scratch, even if you're starting things from seed. So these were some thoughts. Let me know if you've grown any of these or if you have any favorite varieties within the Agastache, Pincushion, and Salvia families, because I know there are so many good plants out there. And stick around because I am going to be planting these up in some containers, and I can't wait to show you what plants I'm going to be combining them with because I'm pretty excited. I think there's going to be a lot of really fun combinations that we can make with some of the other plants I got. So I just wanted to share those 3 plants. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.